And welcome back to another recording of the Social Media News Roundup, a special session on 2021 strategies that will work and make a difference to your business. I am joined again by Natalie Eminae from Ococo Media for a reflection and some recommendations on where we should spend and dedicate our efforts on social media marketing. So let me begin, if you don't mind, Natalie, with your thoughts and kind of reflection on the impact of this year, or maybe the mindset on not just the marketer, but also, of course, the audience and communities on social networks.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year has truly been a year like no other. And usually when you and I catch up at the end of a year, Pascal, it's sort of a little look back and a little look forward and more of a continuation of an evolution into the next stage of things that we'd already been working on and things that had already been moving in a certain direction. This year has massively disrupted what we would consider um, our previous social media marketing approach, and everything that we had kind of previously taken for granted about life and about marketing is a little bit shifted. So we're working on sort of almost a different trajectory than we would be under normal circumstances. And I think it's really something that is separating marketers from people who do marketing at the moment. And what I mean by that is that it's something that I talk about a lot, but it's that true marketing instinct. So actually the ability to position a product or service the correct way, rather than this product or service needs taken to market, there's a post about it. It's actually for those that can be a little bit more thoughtful and those that can adapt to audience changes that we're going to see the biggest wins, because the biggest shift here has not been in the tools that we have at our disposal, although we have seen a little bit of super tracking from different features and a bit of a shift from platforms themselves. The biggest shift has been that our audience and the consumers that would buy our product or service, what they looked like and how they felt last June versus June 2020 has been really quite an emotional shift for a lot of audiences. So essentially what we have seen is a complete pivot in the things that are important to people, the things that are accessible to people, and people's motivation. So really where they're coming from and what they need. And for marketers that are able to tackle the fact that this is a changing landscape, and as we've seen from, we were back in lockdown as of the beginning of November, that I think people potentially thought might happen, but never really saw it on the horizon in the timescale that it had ultimately delivered. For those who are able to navigate that with a bit of poise and a bit of reflection and a bit of thoughtfulness, the opportunities are absolutely massive. And I think what we have seen a shift in is away from, traditional marketing. And I don't mind telling you that if this was a normal year and I was sat on December 3rd live, all of our Christmas marketing would be pretty much wrapped up with a little bow on top, and we'd be like, yep, that's absolutely fine. Let's worry about January right now and plan in what we need to do. But this year is completely different to that. So even the content that we are planning in the office right now, we are building in circuit breakers to client strategies. So, okay, this is what we're doing up until then. And then at that date, we're going to reassess and then we're going to move on. So there's actually these gaps in the strategy that we would never normally have. It would, if we were in completely different times, to have gaps in a December strategy would be absolutely horrifying when we're in December. But actually giving more space and more time to reflect, to adapt, is really what's going to set this year apart. The epitome of this year for me personally has been Halloween. So Halloween was on a Saturday this year, and we had content prepped for all of our clients to go out, and as all good marketers know, a good Halloween post goes out when the day just starts to get spooky. So you're looking at about 4 till 6 p.m. is usually the sweet spot for Halloween. Of course, we had an important broadcast threatened earlier in the day that was going to be 2 p.m., then it was going to be 4 p.m., then it was going to be 6 p.m. So I remember actually sitting at my dining table at home on a Saturday thinking, oh, when do we pivot all of this Halloween content? We still want to get it out for clients, but when can we put it in the right order? And making sure that works. So the level of reflection and thoughtfulness that actually needs to go behind what is largely the most tick box post of the year, which is something spooky goes out when it gets a bit dark on Halloween, is really the epitome of how marketing has changed in 2020, and how there are now so much more elements and pressure points to consider to make sure that as a brand and as businesses, we are hitting with the right tone at the right time, and making sure that we are being super reflective and super responsive in a way that acknowledges that our business is human, and we are experiencing all of the pressures and all of the issues that our audience are also experiencing in real time. And it's that level of marketing that requires so much more effort and dynamism. It really means that for those that can do it and pull it off, we're building these fantastic bonds with customers and potential customers. And for those that can't, while there might not be negative repercussions, you might not find your brand at the center of a Twitter scandal because you sent a spooky post on a day after there'd been a negative announcement. That might not kind of be an issue, but it might just build just a slight disconnect. So for all those brands and businesses that are building these little bonds just one at a time on a subconscious and conscious level with their audiences, if you're consistently not quite hitting the mark, you are taking these bonds away from your audience. And long term, because this is for the long term, it's going to really pay off for the brands that do more and really stifle the efforts of the brands that aren't able to quite get their heads around this.
Thanks very much for the reminder. And, ultimately, we all and are still living through a global crisis. And we and our customers and our peers and associates have been impacted upon both privately and professionally. And I think, what has been delightful to see, which it was always my position, as you know, is that social media marketing is really the domain of small business owners. And they, as a community, have behaved really, really well. From the overnight, some saying, "How can I help?" Setting up support groups, creating events online, all the way to doing obviously quiz nights and fun elements, but really bringing that human element. And that was done overnight, whereas the bigger brands took weeks and months to kind of steer the ship, that they could point, the other way. And I know that, for the many viewers and listeners today who are themselves, part of the smaller team, they should feel very, very pleased and proud of how they adjusted to the mood. But that was exactly the right thing to do, to literally kind of say, well, we had a plan that maybe was created in January because Natalie told us to have a plan, but here we are in March, April, that plan kind of goes. And what we're going to do is be something that you say more reflective and more reactive. All right, so I think, I agree with you. This is the mindset. And in a way, it almost feels like we've returned to the core values of social networking and where social media marketing kind of comes in. But I like your expression of, the difference between a marketer and someone doing marketing. Someone doing marketing would be disconnected from their audience, and then this countless example where, particularly once again, small business owners have been super connected and really understood how to make a difference. Can we begin with tactic number one, which is this idea of I'm sensing and I'm seeing that people have got a much simpler but much clearer weekly schedule. they've almost kind of gone back to first principles, and for themselves, but also for their audience. They're much clearer about the why and the value they can bring by having a much simpler and a much clearer weekly schedule for the Facebook page, the LinkedIn account, for Pinterest, and so on. Is that something that you recognize and that we should keep working on?
Yes, absolutely. So the one thing to bear in mind that's going to help you do this awesomely is, what is the best possible thing for my brand to say today? Bearing in mind the audiences that you have. Think about who they are, what they want to hear, what's going to actually make a positive impact on their life in that moment, based on the exact day, down to are we in lockdown? Have we just come out of lockdown? What's going to add value to their online experience? And if there's something that we think actually they might not necessarily want to hear this today, either keep it in the bank, or keep it in the bank and then eventually get rid of it, or just burn it straight away, just put it straight in the bin. Because often we use certain tactics in marketing that during regular times might not necessarily be the best marketing, but it will be marketing that works. Little things like, if we're writing a blog article about 5 impactful things that your business can do we phrase it as 5 wins, or do we write it on the negative and be like 5 massive mistakes that your business could be making without you knowing? So actually what we're doing is we're bringing negativity out there, because that will typically generate more clicks, because we put the fear of God into someone, and then they're like, oh no, I better be doing these tactics. So, but actually, could we just break that down, and rather than even link to an article, could we just share one exact top tip? So that information goes out, it takes your audiences a matter of seconds to simply read that, but they've had a positive affirmation from your brand on that day. So really get into the micro as to what's gonna work, and exactly what content you have at your disposal, and exactly how that all comes together, because that's going to be the elements that really help this come as a complete strategy. Having an idea for content on a day-by-day basis, well, I probably wouldn't recommend creating your content on a day-by-day basis. Operate something that is a little bit more of a floating schedule. So perhaps create some silos of content banked up, as you've kind of described, so different things that fit different themes, and then pull that content out. So you can still create your content, batch your content, curate your content if you're finding interesting articles that you want the link and signpost to. But rather than commit to those going out at a specific time, at a specific day, particularly during things like lockdown, where the trajectories can change and things can change based on newspaper headlines or press releases that come out that you might not be expecting, have that content so you almost effectively live post it. It's banked, but you are taking very, very clear care as to what goes out when. It also makes it a little bit easier if you are, for example, a physical location and you might be closing, opening, closing, opening. If you create your content in advance with an appropriate evergreen call to action, so it doesn't say come and see us, come and visit us. It says something like, find out more on your website, that works for times and dates where your venue may be open, may be closed. It will work so much better for you. You can always change it if you need to on the day when it goes out, but just be so much more involved in your strategy on a day-to-day basis. It should not take you any more time. It's simply just a redistribution of the time and effort that you would traditionally put in, rather than putting it in on your scheduling software. Pop it in either as a draft, or pop it into like a little spreadsheet database that you're keeping, and then when the time is right, post that, would be my advice for really getting that cracked.
Thanks for that, being a recap on tactic number 1. And I love this idea of reallocating the same amount of time, being a little kinder to yourself, a little kinder to the audience. And also I love, the reminder about, don't forget that, you don't have to create everything, you can curate. And of course you can collaborate. We're going to come on to that in a moment. So tactic number 2, which is something that we you and I mention every year when we do the end of year, looking back, looking forward, is of course taking part in groups, or even hosting a group. And I'm very aware that it's much easier, far more enjoyable in general on Facebook than any other platforms. But just, to keep it as a generic kind of tactic, are we still happy to using groups as a way to, yeah, add value, actually, do something positive for yourself as a business owner, content creator, and help obviously build the brand forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So groups essentially give us something which, I guess, from an evolutionary perspective, is very important because it essentially gives us our tribe, our little area where we can hang out with people that share our values and perceptions. And there are loads of groups on Facebook. There's a lot on LinkedIn as well. But you're exactly right. Facebook tends to be the most rewarding in terms of functionality, and often the most active in terms of posting and things to get involved with. So there's a whole host of different groups. And if you're new to groups, my advice would be start by joining groups that are going to add value to you. So there'll be groups based on your professional sector, there'll be groups based on your geographical location, there'll be groups based on anything. I know that for women in business, there's lots of specific women in business groups that you can join. If you are particularly interested in emerging technologies or using a certain bit of software, you can even get right down to specific issues working within your industry. There will be a group for that. And you don't have to just have it as this is a business tool. You can also join groups of people that drive the same car that you drive, that you might want to talk about tail lights with. And there's lots of responsive ways to connect. And groups can be a great way to just have that peer-to-peer communication. There's different types of groups based on privacy and publicity settings, but usually groups operate on an approved membership basis, so you have to ask the group owner for their permission to join. And once you are in, your post may be public or private depending upon those group settings. So as with all things, if you don't want it screenshot, please don't say it on the internet in any capacity. But generally, groups are a relatively safe space for asking for advice and help and guidance, and also helping others. So if there's an area that you're particularly strong at, but let's say you're business wise, you're full to capacity, but you understand that people within that sector might be struggling, join one of those groups and just comment on posts where people are asking for help. It will give you that warm, fuzzy glow feeling, but it means as a business owner, you can give a little back, but without jeopardizing your own business by either doing pro bono work or troubling yourself with things that might take up a significant amount of time during your day. So you're able to kind of manage it in that aspect. For those that are feeling brave and comfortable with groups, and my advice would be only consider starting your own if you're already very, very familiar with being in a group. So you're familiar with how people ask questions, when people are most active, issues that may arise in the group, because these are human beings and sometimes human beings have a disagreement and sometimes it can get slightly out of hand, as with all things, but most groups play nicely most of the time. But if you've got an idea and a handle on that, and you can spot a little gap in the market, so make sure that your group is bringing something just slightly different to the other groups that you've found, whether that's it's more responsive, whether that's every day you're going to share a certain type of content in that group and you're going to commit to that as basically a carrot or a bonus for someone to join the group. But have a little bit of a USP that is, this is my group and this is what makes me different, and this is really the value. That will make it easier to grow the group and to talk about the group on your other social platforms, because ultimately you're going to have to get people to request to join the group to grow the group to get the interaction. So that's sometimes where a group can fall a little foul. Make sure you're bringing something of value to the table, and that means when you post on LinkedIn saying, hey, if you're a graphic designer, I've set up a new graphic design kind of group, and we're going to be sharing best practice and top tips, and we're specifically going to be looking at, and then that's enough to give people a bit of a reason to join, rather than if you're a graphic designer, here's my new group. It just falls a little bit flat. So make sure we're giving people justification, and then stand by whatever you've agreed to give them, because you need to be rewarding your members for that interaction. But groups are a great way to actually have that peer-to-peer communication. There's lots more group functionality coming. So we are live in a group right now, which again, people are only able to see this and watch this live if they are in that group. So that's a benefit to being in the group. So actually make sure that we are putting in the content and the effort. And these things do take time to grow. It is graft to grow a group, but if you do this right, you are going to create your own little tribe of people that are either peers or potential customers that you can interact with, bring value to, and basically use this opportunity to have a really positive impact in a social media space.
Yeah, thanks very much for the reminder about tactic number 2. And I love, the progression. Join the group first, learn what it's like to be in a group, and make notes about your future experience as the group leader, so to speak. But the other thing that I've seen done a lot more this year as well, Natalie, is people actually joining to actually run the group. So this kind of collaboration in around not being on your own to be the moderator, and sometimes even the person that brings content and value. And for me, it's also a reflection on when I talk to my customers, and what they say is, it's not just that, we've missed being with people. It's not that we've missed actually going out and about. Is that as a result of that, our word of mouth marketing has gone really, really quiet. So what the groups can do is kind of almost reproduce, not 100%, but reproduce a big chunk of that networking, that word of mouth, that reminding people, particularly from a prospective point of view, people remember who they met recently, not who they may have met, sadly, last year. So I think the groups have a role to play in your own kind of sense of well-being, positivity. There's nothing like bringing some value content which you may have curated to get a big thank you from the group, but also to feel a bit more connected and to continue to kind of make sure that there's that continuous noise about your brand and your positioning. Tactic number 3, which you just mentioned a moment ago, going live.
Yes, so live is it's the final frontier of online video, isn't it? It's essentially the most human type of content that you can put out there, and connecting with other humans is something that we have always valued in a social media marketing space. It's something where if we can see and hear, and particularly see the eyes of another human being, we're biologically pre-programmed to look for all of this stuff, to build connections. We are, we're, at the end of the day, we're a community animal, and we're looking to build connections with those around us. So actually going live is the most human element. It allows you to communicate with all of your, I guess, all of the faculties that you may use, like facial expressions, like hand gestures, I'm very big on, in real time with your audiences. So essentially you're able to provide the ultimate kind of reassurance and physical presence, either within this group or kind of on other platforms. So you might go live on LinkedIn and just simply broadcast to your community, for example. But actually that live real-time offering gives you a significant advantage because you are right in front of your audience. They can interact with you in real time. They can ask questions. And you can be so of the moment. You could comment on a particular issue or element of breaking news, or things that your audience need to know about right at that moment, allowing it to bring the next level of value. So we're creating huge connection and we're delivering huge value to our audiences through that physical presence. It's probably the most intimidating type of video content for a lot of people, but actually I find it worse to record something because I don't like watching it back, whereas at least when you're live, you're on the treadmill and you can't stop, so you just got to keep going. It's sometimes a little bit easier. So I would absolutely recommend that live is something that we consider as we move into 2021, to really ensure that in a space where we may not be able to be face to face with people in a professional capacity, it gives our businesses a physical presence that still adds value.
Yeah, I mean, what is interesting for me as a video marketing consultant, I used to explain there's a journey, and the endpoint was live. So once you've done everything else, I've explained, from essentially short video messages all the way to vlogging, then live is you're ready for this. And I've changed completely. I now tell people to do live first. And there's so many things you could do. So to begin with, you could be within a group, so you don't have to necessarily make it a big global kind of broadcast. It could be within a group of people that you know already. So when you go live, you'll see their names appearing and you'll know that it's Mark and then it's Jeff. And and Richard and Sally and so on. The other thing that is great with live is, like you said, it's a one-shot wonder. You've got to get on with it, and there's so many options. So you could do a live session to look back at some content that you've shared recently. You could do a live session to actually comment on something you've curated. You could go live with guests as well. There's so many other things you could do with it. So sometimes people say, "Well, I wouldn't be sure what to say." My reaction is, you're going to talk about what you would write about or discuss if you were at a networking event. And so in terms of visibility, we mentioned group as part of tactic number 2, and live, I think, is so important. And the platforms are all working very, very hard to make it easier to go live. So, I mean, we could have gone live directly through the mobile phones, which was Zoom because you wanted the screen share and be able to see each other. And I think that from the point of view of being accessible, being present, and for others to ask you supplementary questions to become a trusted proposition in a noisy marketplace, big fan. And you can start very, very small by making it a private session with just two people that you know, then 10, then 20, then you can open it up. So thank you very much for that. So let's move on to the next one, which would be around using the platforms to sell. So that kind of e-commerce, B2B, B2C, because of course you can package services as well as products. And I know that your recommendation every year is to just become more curious about some of the features and functions that you may have missed.
Yeah, absolutely. End of year is always a great time to actually take a step back and free yourself up from the day to day. Oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and actually look at features that you may have missed that networks have introduced, and just ensure that everything that is there and available that you would like to use, you're using. You don't have to worry about using everything just because it's there as a feature, but actually cherry pick the elements that you would really like. And I think as we see more businesses shift online, and as we see certain sectors disproportionately affected by the way that the world is right now, particularly looking at retail, particularly looking at businesses that might be smaller or craftier businesses, or perhaps the infamous side gigs. So just something that you do alongside the day job that you might then sell at a local fair or a craft fair on a weekend. Essentially, just based on how the world is right now, those routes to market have been cut off. But for people that actually can create really cool things, that want to share, that want to earn money via these sources, it might be forcing you to reassess the platforms as you previously used them, and have another look around at these e-commerce facilities. Now, these are something that businesses like Facebook, like TikTok, are consistently looking to improve upon. So, first of all, consider the platforms that your target customers are going to be active on. And these are the ones that you need to have your strongest e-commerce strategy for. If you don't sell your products to the under 35s, don't worry about Instagram, and certainly don't worry about TikTok. Start with Facebook. If you sell a range of cartoon t-shirts that are predominantly bought by 17-year-olds, worry about TikTok. Maybe leave Facebook for the time being. So consider where your audiences are, and then get your strategies nailed down for these platforms as the starting point. Have a little look at the e-commerce facilities available for you. Often these adjust and shift within a year. So for example, TikTok has just announced a new partnership with Shopify, allowing better integration and plugins. So that now functions much better than it used to. But if you've been very busy with other things, that's the type of, I guess, update that you may have missed. Facebook and Instagram have been very, very busy with shops, and the idea of being able to retail directly through those platforms. We have seen some good news results from businesses anecdotally. However, there are a lot of hoops to jump through in order to get this verification, because Facebook increasingly if you are paying money to Facebook, they want to know exactly who you are and exactly what you're doing based on negative backlash that they have had in the past. So it's about ironing those issues out. So make sure that your ducks are in a row. And if you've got a little bit of spare time as we move more into December, it's a great time to be working through those tick box exercises to ensure that if you want to sell via Insta or Facebook shops, you're getting everything right. Even if we're not planning to do it this side of Christmas, it's still a great time to get everything done, assessed, and get that approval. Once you've got the approval for your shop on whatever Facebook platform you are using, whether that's Facebook itself or whether that's Insta, that will stay there. You don't have to use it right away, but it might take you a little bit of time to get that all set up. So it's well worth having a little look again at these routes to market and what's been updated and what you've missed. And just because you were doing it last year doesn't mean that you need to keep it going. So if you are, let's say you're running Twitter ads, but actually your cost per click has doubled and your your sales have gone massively down, don't be afraid to adjust that and swap it up. Often a lot of businesses say, oh yes, I still do that, but it didn't work like it used to. Do it, change it, take the time to actually reassess that funnel. It can be hard in the day-to-day when you're very, very busy, but if you can afford yourself a little bit of time to look at that and analyze, try something new, or make sure that everything is working in an order that you're happy with.
Yeah, thanks very much. And this idea of taking time out for your own professional development, it's at the heart, obviously, of the Digital Drive Kevin Darren program. But we need to do that. Literally bring a notepad, a pen, and go, right, I'm going to learn, or I'm going to remind myself of things that I've neglected for a while. And I think your last point about knowing when to just ignore and move on. Because of course, those platforms are looking after a very broad audience. They're trying to do lots of things, sometimes too many things at the same time. And it is your job to kind of go, right, of all the things that I could do, these are the one or two kind of features or the one or two kind of techniques that I'm going to use that are going to make a big difference. The rest, it's a nice to have or irrelevant, or more importantly, I just don't have the time and I'm focusing on the strategies, which is really at the heart of this conversation today. We are going to mention, I think, altogether 5 strategies. Of course, there are more, but if you do those 5, 100%, not just a little bit, and my goodness, your business will move forward. So then the others may be brought in a bit later. So let's talk about the 5th one then, which is advertising.
Yeah, so advertising is really, on social media, one of the most cost-effective ways to get your product, your service, or your message out to new audiences. And the reason that it's so popular is because typically cost for visibility for ads on something like Facebook is phenomenally low. So actually it really doesn't cost all that much to get visibility. The pitfall that a lot of businesses will find themselves in is getting the wrong visibility. So they're reaching a lot of people, but these people look nothing like the people that will buy their product or services. And on social media, really, we want to be specific about who we're going after. The biggest bane of my life is the Facebook boost post button. And if you take away one thing from this kind of podcast there, please promise me you won't press that boost post button anymore. So boost post it's completely a little bit of a red herring, and it encourages people to use advertising without looking at the full advertising toolkit and actually identifying exactly what they need. It's essentially the equivalent of being in a supermarket and right next to the tills where they've got like a couple of chocolate bars that are just designed to tempt you, and you think, oh, you know what, I will have that, versus being in the full chocolate aisle and having everything available in front of you. Would you pick the same chocolate bar? Maybe, maybe not, but it's well worth knowing. So if you run your ads instead via Facebook Ads Manager, and this is also where you set up your Instagram ads, because Instagram is a Facebook product. If rather than click that boost post button, you spend a little bit of time, grab a notepad, a cup of tea, or if you want to do it on an evening, even treat yourself to a little glass of wine and have a very refined Facebook evening. Have a little look through your advertising metrics available in Ads Manager. And basically you're looking for all of the things that you can do there that you wouldn't normally be able to do through a traditional just boost post button. So boost post will typically allow you to target on 1 or 2 metrics and a geographical area. Through your ads manager, you can target based on what you would like people to do with that ad. So do you want people to engage with the ad? Do you want people to watch a video? Do you want people to click through to your website? And it's starting to set up the right metrics for you when you get your Facebook reporting. But more importantly, it's also filtering your audience even at that stage, because Facebook's looking at that going, right, they want video watchers. Who looks like a video watcher? So it's the first filter of actually getting your audience of people that perform this particular behavior on Facebook. From there, you can base on geographical area. Now that can be as narrow or as broad as you like. So if you are B2B and you're only serving a local area, great, you can narrow it right down, even to a postcode specific basis. If you sell online, your e-commerce, and you ship UK wide, you can target the whole of the UK. It's entirely up to you. A little bit of a life hack: if you are a Northeast business or you're a Southwest business, wherever you're based, there's no harm in targeting just the Northeast and saying these products are handmade in the Northeast, because a lot of Northeast customers will feel more affinity when they see your advert for the first time. So even if you can physically sell nationally, don't always feel that you have to. So you can target geographically. You can also then target based on a couple of core areas, which are demographics, things that are true about people. These tend to be slow moving. So do they work in a certain sector? Do they have a certain family structure? Do they have a 3-year-old? These are things that may change over time, but typically take a little bit of time. Their 3-year-old will be a 4-year-old eventually, but these are slow moving options. You can also target based on behaviors, so things that we know that they do. So whether they are a small business owner and that's a proven behavior, whether they're an early technology adapter and that's a proven behavior, whether they have a higher than average level of spend on leisure, that's a proven behavior. And then we've got their interests, so things that they're talking about or looking at. And within those metrics, we can create our little 3D person that looks just like a target customer. We can filter by age and gender if you would like to, but my advice is generally, if you get the targeting right, you don't necessarily need to worry about things like age and gender. You just need to worry about, I want people who are hamster owners who are looking to treat their hamster this Christmas, and they have a higher than average level of spend on pet supplies. So you can build your niche audience and make that work for your business. So definitely have a look and then explore through Ads Manager. Facebook and Instagram advertising and Messenger advertising, because they fit into that Facebook family, are usually the most cost effective by miles. It should cost you, it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string, but typically £10 per 1,000 people reached. On a worst case scenario, we've seen that as low as 30, 50 pence per 1,000 people reached, which is phenomenally cost effective. So you can have a go with ads with very, very small budgets, but definitely make sure these audiences look just like a potential target customer, and make sure that if we are paying to advertise to these audiences, those sales funnels and the e-commerce process is all set up and correct. So we're paying to reach our niche audience. We're showing them some lovely products or services presented in a really nice way, and we're getting them to purchase and convert, and having that working on almost a micro level. So if you sell to different audiences, you sell a range of products, create a small funnel for each, rather than trying to kind of be all things to everyone or just targeting based on geographical area. Go niche and your sales will go big. So absolutely ads, it's underrated, but it's an area that people do fall into little traps with, and the social networks are not always on your side with little tools like Boost Post. Great if you are literally a family friendly pub that caters for everyone in a local area, that's absolutely fine. But if you are even in the slightest bit niche, you need to go beyond those metrics to get it working for you. But if you can, and if you do, and if you invest the time, it's going to be an absolute game changer for 2021.
I always smile when you give the, talk about advertising because you're so passionate about it. But of course, that comes from first-hand experience with the work that you do with your clients and so on. And for me, just as we're coming to the end of our 2021 strategies session, it's just a reminder that on balance, your customers are in charge of your marketing. By knowing who they are and by being able to create a profile, it leads you to making some very wise decisions. So we spoke about, running the account and having a simpler and clearer schedule that you can adapt very quickly to almost on a day-to-day basis, but always looking at bringing value, but also demonstrating that you're present, you understand, you can pick up moods, and you're here to bring value, and you are actually genuinely concerned about how people are doing. Number two, you can kind of evolve that with groups, then you can evolve that with live. So it's really this idea of what can I do to make your day a little better today? And yes, we want to sell eventually, but build the trust, build a relationship first. And then we move on to some very, very interesting work with, the e-commerce and also some of the kind, I would say, B2B promotional features. And that requires time in learning. And we need to give ourselves a bit of a break and carve out the time whereby we spend an hour here, a morning here to just sit down and go, what do I want to learn? What do I want to understand better? And then within that actually is advertising, where I think I'm picking up that it's by doing that you're going to learn more. I know you've done your fair share as part of this program to educate us about advertising. Put a tenner to one side, test, learn, move on again until eventually it becomes it. But those 5 strategies, yes, there are more, but those 5 strategies, we would encourage them to do them fully. And I think because of the tendency for people to spread themselves quite thinly across the different facets of digital marketing, we will have tendency to do a lot of things very superficially. And if you believe that creating connections and relationship is part of how your business is going to grow, and word of mouth marketing is part of how your business is going to grow, then maybe it's all about doing that social media marketing more thoroughly and have a deeper understanding than perhaps the previous years.
Absolutely. It's all about leveling up right now. Right now, we've got to up our game and we've got to be the positive marketing force that we would like to see. Put yourself in the consumer's shoes. What are they going to want to see? And make sure that we're consistently striving to deliver that. And anything less might have flown in previous years, but just might not be enough to cut it.
No, absolutely. Well, can I then close this session by thanking the team at We Are Umi and the Digital Drive County Durham for allowing us to go live for this recording of the Social Media News Roundup. Thank you to you, our audience, live and on replay. Your support is truly appreciated. And I know many of you will have actually attended the sessions that we did as webinars and online masterclass, Natalie and I. So thank you for your support. It just made our year to know that, albeit virtually, we had friends and close acquaintances on the other side of the webcam. And thank you to you, Natalie, once again for giving up some of your time to share your recommendations and your reflection on strategies for next year. That is the last recording of 2020 as far as the Social Media News Roundup is concerned. We will be back in 2021 with more reviews, rants and raves about your favorite social networks. Until then, go out there and make sure your social networking is better and faster. Bye for now.